We are now in the part of our worship where where we hear the very voice of God through the reading of His Scripture. Let's read Ruth chapter 4. Now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken came by. So Boaz said, "Turn aside, my friend, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of the land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here, in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one beside you to redeem it, and I come after you." And he said, "I will redeem it." Then Boaz said, "The day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquired Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." Then the Redeemer said, "I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it." Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself," he drew off his sandals. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are the witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon, also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers. And from the gate of this native place, you are the witnesses this day." Then all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephratah and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went to her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the woman of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Aminadab. Aminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. This is the word of the Lord. We are now in the last chapter of our series in Ruth. And in chapter 3, we learned that Boaz was in action on redeeming Ruth and Naomi. He was willing to redeem them and promised to Ruth to do what she asked. But there was a nearest redeemer than him. When Ruth got back to her mother-in-law, Naomi, she told everything about what happened in the threshing floor. And Ruth 3 ended with Naomi's praise, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." Now Boaz will address this matter here in chapter 4. Before Yen and I entered marriage, we faced many problems. It was during pandemic. She lost her job. She lost her grandmother. I'm also affected of her situation because habang papalapit na po yung wedding namin, yung pera ko din po nagpe-fade na. But in God's providential care, He sustained us through the support of the church. The wedding was accomplished, and the Lord was glorified. And this mirrors the situation of Ruth and Naomi. They are both widow. During that time, there was a famine in Bethlehem. But under God's providence, their needs were met. Binigay po ng Panginoon. Ruth encountered Boaz, a kinsman redeemer, who restored their life. Ultimately, this story points to Jesus, the true redeemer and restorer of life. So the title of our sermon this afternoon, Jesus, the restorer of life. And we have three points for our sermon. First, the greater redeemer of all. Here in our first point, we can see that Boaz was in action of redeeming Ruth, a Gentile, and Naomi, a Jew. But ultimately, we can see what Christ will done in these verses. Pangalawa po, in our second point, the bridegroom of the church. In our second point, it was the picture of wedding and marriage. We will see here that Boaz took Ruth as his wife, and the Lord blessed them with a child. Both Ruth and Naomi's life was restored. Their grief turned to joy. It is also the picture of church union with Christ. In our third point, the royal line to the true and greater king. Makita po natin ito sa verses 18 to 22. The genealogy leads to David, but it leads ultimately to Jesus, the true and greater King. Our sermon idea for this afternoon, Jesus, the true King, redeems both Jews and Gentiles, and as the bridegroom, He shares His life and inheritance with the church. The union of Christ and the church will be fully enjoyed in the full consummation at the marriage supper of the Lamb, when Christ will present His bride in glory, purified, perfected, and dwells perfectly with Him in everlasting joy. For kids, listen carefully, and parents teach them these three words. Una po, Redeemer. Pangalawa, marriage. Pangatlo po ay King. Marriage, Redeemer. Marriage, King. Hindi po ito sa Tito King, ha? To summarize it, Jesus, our King, who loves you, desires you to come closer to Him. Again, Jesus, our King, who loves you, desires you to come closer to Him. Now let's go to our first point, the greater Redeemer of all. So mag-focus po tayo sa verses 1 to 12. Now chapter 4 begins with Boaz went and seated at the city gate of Bethlehem. Since Boaz was a godly man, he wants to fulfill what he promised to Ruth. He said in chapter 3, verse 13, "As the Lord lives, I will redeem you." He was a man of word, and now a man of action. Now, this scene was in the city gate. In ancient Hebrew, this city gate was a combination of a town hall and courthouse. It is a place where judicial matters solved by the elders. Boaz sat there to ensure his transaction with the nearest redeemer. He wants to make sure that it was fully transparent and legal. Behold, sabi po dito sa verse 1, "Behold, the nearer kinsman came." The word behold in Hebrew is an expression of parang ganito po siya, after Boaz sat down, the nearest kinsman came. Earlier, I just mentioned Ruth chapter 3, verse 13, where Boaz made an oath as a sign of determination to quickly resolve the issue. Now the Lord, in His providence, made the nearest kinsman came quickly. And Boaz said to him, "Turn aside, my friend. Sit down here." Makikita po natin na parang very informal si Boaz dito sa nearest kinsman. Boaz didn't mention his name and just called him friend. Sa Hebrew po, ito po ay someone. The writer of Ruth didn't give his name, and there is a reason why. Later, we will know the reason of it. Then Boaz took 10 elders of the city to sit down there as a witness to their transaction with the nearest kinsman redeemer. Now, Boaz mentioned his concern. Sabi niya po, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech." We all know that in chapter 1, Naomi's husband Elimelech died. Tsaka po yung dalawa niyang anak, si Malon and Chilion, died. And no immediate male left in her family. Because of poverty, Naomi want to sell the piece of land just to raise money para po makasurvive siya. So Boaz told the nearest kinsman to buy it in the presence of the elders. Then he used an if-else statement. "If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me so I can redeem it." And the answer Boaz received from the nearest kinsman was, I will redeem it." The nearest kinsman was willing to redeem the property. Problema po ito kay Boaz. It appears that there will be no wedding between Boaz and Ruth kung mangyari po ito. But Boaz, magaling po siyang programmer. If the nearest kinsman redeemer say, "I will redeem it," then a trap card will be activated. Boaz said, "The day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquired Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." The law regarding the levirate was also linked to the inherited estate. So pag in-acquire po yung land, kasama po yung widow. Sabi po ni younger K. Lawson notes, "Where the land has already been alienated, redemption of it triggers the levirate duty." In other words, the purchase of the land activated the necessity for the kinsman redeemer to marry Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, so that they could raise up a child who will eventually inherit the field when he grew up. So ito po yung pinaka-purpose ng levirate marriage, para magtuloy-tuloy po yung lineage. After hearing it, the nearest kinsman redeemer declines his right to redeem the property and posterity of Elimelech. He changed his mind. He was unwilling to take care of it. Sabi po ng isang theologian, si Douglas Lane, commented, the nearest kinsman backed away from the deal because if there were to be a child from the relationship nila ni Ruth, the Redeemer would lose the field and there will be no benefit to his own children and the state to compensate for the cost involved in taking care of Naomi and Ruth. The nearest kinsman, instead of doing what was for the good of others, doing his duty as a redeemer, he's selfishly protecting his own future, his own legacy. Remember that this was still in the time of Judges, where everyone was living as if there was no king, living what was right in their own eyes. Verse 7, verse 8, nakita po natin yung custom ng Israel. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm the transaction, the one drew off his sandals and gave it to others. And this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself," he drew off his sandals. So to understand this, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10. Verse 5. If brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. And if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, "My husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me." Then the elders of the city shall call him and speak to him, and if he persists, saying, "I do not wish to take her," then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders and pull his sandals off his foot and spit in his face. And she shall answer and say, "So shall it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And the name of his house shall be called in Israel." Ito po yung sasabihin sa the house of him who had his sandals pulled off. It described the ceremony of conducted when a kinsman declined his duty. So pag dinecline po ng kinsman, he will remove his sandals and the woman should spit in his face. We can ask a question. Why Ruth did not spit in the face of the nearest redeemer? Sa kaso po nito, sa Ruth chapter 4, it was not a formal levirate marriage trial. It was a civil property transaction. So they did the part of ceremony. Ginawa lang po nila yung part na ceremony, yung sa sandals. The writer of Ruth never identified the name of the nearest kinsman because he was not worthy of the honor. He declined to fulfill his obligation as the nearest kinsman to Ruth. The time the nearest kinsman redeemer handed the sandals to Boaz, it was a symbolic act declaring his right of redemption. Boaz didn't waste his time. He joyfully purchased legally Elimelech's land from the hand of Naomi and acquired Ruth. In love na in love po siya kay Ruth, sa madaling salita. He redeemed both the property and posterity of Elimelech. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers, and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day." We can see here that Boaz loved Ruth so much. He joyfully made it public and legal. He even said to them, both elders and all the people there, "You are witnesses this day." And the gate of the city closed with a blessing. Galing po ito sa mga witnesses. We can observe 3 blessings. Verse 11. First blessing, the elders blessed them that Ruth's womb would be fruitful and would build Boaz's house as Rachel and Leah did for Jacob. Pangalawa po, verse 11 pa rin, "You may act worthily in Ephrata and be renowned in Bethlehem." The elders blessed him that his name would become famous and be remembered in Bethlehem. Verse 12, "May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by Ruth." Have you seen the picture of this church? The nameless nearest kinsman redeemer represent the law. He had the legal right to redeem Naomi and Ruth, but he declined. He said to Boaz in verse 6, "I cannot redeem it for myself." His refusal was not just a personal. It was disobedience to the law. And it brought shame and disgrace to his house. Kanina po binasa natin Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse 10. "And the name of his house shall be called in Israel the house of him who had his sandal pulled off." That refusal shows the law function. It accuses and condemns. The law is holy and demands perfect obedience. But it only produces guilt, shame, judgment, because it has no power to redeem. No fallen person can obey it perfectly. So it brings death to all sinners. Galatians chapter 3 verse 10, "For all who rely on works of the law are under a curse. For it is written, Cursed be everyone who does not abide by all things written in the book of the law and do them." The law brings sin to life. In other words, sin takes the law and uses it as a tool to make us even more sinful. Romans chapter 7 verse 11. "For sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me." After the nameless kinsman, gave his sandal to Boaz. By the way, the sandal is a picture where they stand. It was their property. He was saying that he gave up with the property and he will give it to Boaz. Now, Boaz has the full responsibility to take care of the redemption of both Ruth and Naomi. We all know that Boaz, he was a picture of Christ. He was a blood relative that was willing and came to redeem them. He kept his promise and fulfilled the law. He has the means to purchase Naomi. He was willing to marry Ruth, the wife of the deceased. Jesus came a blood relative to us through the virgin birth. He was willing to lay down his life for the sinners. He kept his promise. He kept the law and paid the penalty of it. He had the merit to purchase his own people, both Jews and Gentiles, and marriage relationship between him and the church. Jesus, the greater Redeemer of all, he laid down his life for the church, both Jews and Gentiles. He has caused us to be born again to a living hope and gave us an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for us. The love of God towards the church is unfathomable. We can't imagine it. How can a sinner like us be saved and given eternal inheritance? How unloving we are, but the Lord still loves us. He shared all of this. You know what? Kung bakit? Because of the steadfast love of God towards us, toward this church. Verse 11 to 12, we saw the blessing of the witnesses to Boaz. Now that blessing will come to reality one by one. We all know that Ruth, before Boaz, she was poor. She was poor living. She was a poor widow living in a foreign land with no child, and she was restless. Now let us move to our second point, and let's see what happened to her life. The bridegroom of the church. Verse 13. Now Boaz took Ruth and became his wife. He went to her, and the Lord gave them a son. Natanong niyo po ba kung bakit si Boaz, a Jew, marry a Moabite woman? In the legal background of Torah, Deuteronomy chapter 23 verse 3 mentioned that no Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever. The Torah prohibits Moabites from entering the assembly of the Lord. Hindi po sinasabi dito explicitly that they cannot socialize with the Moabite. The problem is not the ethnicity, but the sin of idolatry. The Lord knew the heart of every man. Marrying unbelievers led Israelites sin to idolatry. But Ruth, the Moabite, professed her faith to God of Israel in chapter 1. So it suggests that we should marry with same faith like Boaz and Ruth. Let's continue. In verse 11, the elder blessed them that Ruth's womb would be fruitful. Now the Lord gave them a son. The Lord blessed them because it was the intention of levirate marriage. to preserve the lineage. The life of Ruth with Boaz, she is now a rich and favored wife, living with enough food. She already has a field with Boaz. And ngayon, meron na po silang anak. She is now enjoying her husband and son, the family that the Lord gave them. The restless Boaz completed his mission. Now Ruth can finally rest in him. Now the scene turned to Naomi in verses 14 to 15. But before we proceed, let us remember the life of Naomi without Boaz. Her life was bitter. The chapter 1 of the book started with a funeral. Her husband died. Her 2 sons died. She was poor. Ito po yung status ng widow sa ancient times. Her grief would remain. Maybe their land was lost. The lineage would lost forever. Maybe her name still be called Mara or bitter. Maybe until the end of her days, she considering herself as dead. But here in verse 14, started, then the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel. Shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Ito pong statement foreshadowed the climax of the story. Naomi's grandson is the answer to the tragic loss of her husband and 2 sons. With the hopeful birth of her grandson, he will be a restorer of life, a sustainer of her old age. Just to get the picture of this, dito po sa country natin, when our parents or grandparents matanda na po, we welcome them into our house. Despite of our financial situation, we are going to help and sustain their needs. This is what the townspeople are saying to Naomi. But this could not have happened without her daughter-in-law, who displayed her undying love to Naomi, even in the most desperate of circumstances. We know by God's sovereign grace, Ruth helped to redeem Naomi from poverty and debt. In this way, Ruth was indeed worth more than a 7 son. Now Naomi took the child, laid him on her lap, and became his nurse. The woman of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, parang nickname po ito, a son has been born to Naomi. Naomi will be taking care of his child because it is her land that this child is going to inherit. They named the child Obed. Ang ibig sabihin po nito, servant. Parang katunog po, Obadiah. As child grows and Naomi's ages, Obed will serve, provide, and guard his grandmother. Naomi's emptiness has turned to fullness. By God's grace, the blessing has come to Naomi in Obed's birth. The story ends with a short genealogy from Obed to Jesse and then to David. From verse 13 to 17, we haven't seen the name of Boaz. Ito pong nangyari dito, it was the effect of his redemption to Ruth and Naomi. A bridegroom and bride, Boaz and Ruth rejoice in the Lord's favor. The Lord gave them son. They are celebrating a great blessing from the Lord. This child was not merely for their joy, but for Naomi as well. Kaya itong blessing of redemption overflowed beyond the couple, reaching the family and the covenant community. This marriage is a picture of Christ and His church. Christ unites Himself with the church by redeeming us, by shedding His blood as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Christ was widely known in all Israel, even in other nations, because both Jews and Gentiles are redeemed by Him. He is the restorer and sustainer of our life. He will take care of His people forever. Christ, our groom, showers us with grace. And this grace overflowed in the covenant community, not only limited to us, but also to unbelievers, so that the blessing of redemption are seen. Meron po tayong dalawang application sa ating second point. Una po, three application. The blessing of redemption was a communal blessing. The blessing given by Ruth, Boaz, and Naomi was not limited to them. It overflowed to the community. The blessing they receive, it's not only for their own joy, but also the community. May kita po natin, di ba po, may nasa paligid. Ay sila pa ngayon nag-nickname kay Obed. Kaya po, when the time we have Isaiah, you rejoice for us. When Jael, Mac have Eliah, we rejoice for them. When Robbie graduated, we rejoice for her. The blessing that we receive are also the blessing of the covenant church. We rejoice communally. Pangalawa, Naomi received blessing of a grandson. And the writer of Ruth mentioned that Obed will take care of her when she ages. We Filipino love to take care of our parents and grandparents. May we also be a blessing to them. Take care of them. Don't let them be in a bad situation na hindi na po natin sila alagaan. Pray for their needs, for the Lord will listen to our prayer, church. Pangatlo po, as a church, may we remember that Christ, our groom, will take care of us, for He is our restorer of life. And the redemption given to us is progressive po. So, He is also our sustainer of life. May we come to Him always in prayer, for the Lord love His people. Let us go to our last point. The royal line to the true and greater King. Verses 18 to 22. Let us read. Now these are the generation of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Aminadab. Aminadab fathered Nashon. Nashon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. Magtaka po ba kayo kung bakit inulit yung genealogy? Meron na po sa verses 17. sa verse 17 po, was written to intentionally reveal how God's sovereignty redeemed Naomi and brought about the birth of Obed. Ngayon po, ito pong verses 18 to 22 was linked the event of the story with the line that would build the house of Israel more than any family since the time of Jacob, the line of David. The book of Ruth is more than a love story between Boaz and Ruth, or a story of a poor widow rescued from poverty. It is also a historical account that recounts the background of the king of Israel in order to legitimize his reign. The reign of David, the tribe of Judah, is very important. Tignan po natin Genesis chapter 49, verse 10. Sabi po dito, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples." Which mean, the king will come from this tribe. They need a king who will take care of them, because in the time of judges, they are doing what was good in their own times, own eyes. Kahit po mga oras po nila na yun. Now, Abraham, all know this genealogy. Abraham has a son named Isaac. Isaac fathered Jacob. Jacob fathered Judah. And Judah has a son named Perez. And it go to David. David is from the tribe of Judah. God promised not only a king, but a redeemer king. This genealogy was not just a family record. Hindi lang po ito basta-bastang record. It was a record of divine sovereignty of God, a thread weaving pointing ultimately to Jesus, who is the true and greater king. He is far more greater than David or any king. Their earthly kingdom will perish, and their reign and governance are limited. But for Jesus, it is eternal reign. He will also eternally care for His people. We will not only saving from the war or poverty, Jesus can also save us from sin and death. And His kingdom is forever. That is why the genealogy of Jesus was written in the book of Matthew chapter 1, where we can see the kingship of Christ. This is the king they needed. This genealogy pointing also to the eschatological climax. We as a church are living in a joy of being united with our groom. We are now experiencing His faithfulness and covenant love. Though Christ is reigning now, the full consummation awaits. When He returns, His reign will reach to its completion. The church will join and gather to celebrate the final marriage supper of the Lamb. There, the bridegroom will present his bride, the church, in glory, purified and perfected. With Him, the everlasting joy will be tasted. I want to end this with Revelation chapter 19, verse 6 to 9. Verse 6. Then I heard what seemed to be the voice of a great multitude, like a roar of many waters, and like the sound of mighty peals of thunders, crying out, Hallelujah! For the Lord our God, the Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and exult and give Him the glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and His bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure. For the fine linen is the righteous deed of the saint. And the angel said to me, Write this, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, These are the true words of God. We have 4 applications for this. First, for now, let us enjoy being united with Christ while we are waiting in the full consummation. He gave us blessing to endure and continuously growing us in the image of Jesus. Pangalawa, we know we are here in the Philippines where we are always saying walang forever. We should not put that in our mind as a Christian. We should always remember the love of Christ toward church. And it is eternal. Pangatlo, though the situation we have now is challenging because of the price hikes everywhere, we should trust our King. Our King will take care of us. He is the sustainer of His people. Pang-apat po, all of us are fighting our own sins. But Jesus, the restorer of life, want us na lumapit sa Kanya. And surely, He will restore your life. His words are true and wonderful. We can always come to Jesus, for we are weak. Let me repeat our sermon point. Jesus, the true King, redeems both Jews and Gentiles, and as the bridegroom, He shares His life and inheritance with the church. The union of Christ and the church will be fully enjoyed in the full consummation at the marriage supper of the Lamb, when Christ will present His bride in glory, purified, perfected, and dwells perfectly with Him in everlasting joy.